You need to be out there finding something that drives you. If you're passionate about it, you can get that outside of the office and then grow in all your other soft skills outside of that too.
You're listening to the Architect My Life podcast, a show dedicated to empowering women architects and designers to achieve business growth, financial freedom, and health and wellness. I'm Shlachter, your host and CEO of MGS Global Group. Our company provides Revit, ArchiCAD, and CAD drafting services to busy architects and design firm owners. MGS Global started as a part-time gig when I was a new mom, but it has now grown into a thriving business that provides drafting support to creatives, helping everyone maintain a healthy work-life balance. This podcast is proudly presented by MGS Global Group. Now let's dive into this episode. Today we have a distinguished guest who is a pillar in her industry. She is an award-winning accomplished Filipina-American architect with over a decade and a half of experience in urban planning, education, and healthcare architecture. Our guest this week is Cathy Morrison, principal at Neighboring Concepts. What sets Cathy apart is not just her professional achievements, but also her firm belief in the transformative power of the built environment. She has a burning passion for collaborative design and firmly believes that a well-designed space can profoundly enhance our daily experiences and overall community well-being. Cathy extends her influence beyond her projects. She is an active member of the North Carolina Board of Architecture and the NCARB Region 3 Board of Directors. Additionally, Cathy devotes her time and efforts as a board member for two significant community organizations, Loaves and Fishes Friendship Trace and Do Greater Charlotte. I'm so thrilled to talk to her today. Welcome to the show, Cathy.
Glad to be here. Super excited to be here.
It's been a long time coming. How did we meet again? I remember we talked before.
We did. It was probably one of those Facebook groups.
Yeah,
there
COVID
are a
times.
few out there. Yes, COVID times, Facebook groups, connecting other architects around the country, and somehow we connected over some comment on a post.
And I think I sent a newsletter and you sent me a message saying that I'm also Filipina, and I was so excited because every time I meet a creative entrepreneur, architect, or designer, I'm so excited because I live in Cleveland and every Filipina here is either a nurse or a doctor.
Absolutely. Or accountant, they're...
Oh, really? So...
Yes.
So when I found out you were running your own firm, I'm like, I want to talk to her. And so 2 years later, we're here.
Here we are. Yes.
So I always like to ask this, why architecture? Do you have a childhood experience or a person that, made you want to become a creative or do architecture?
I think I was always involved in the arts. It was something my parents encouraged. They were both doctors, as the stereotype goes, right? They're all doctors. Everyone in my family, long history in the medical field. But I always wanted to do art. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And I knew that if I had to deviate at some point or else I'd be pushed down the path of medicine like everyone else. So when I was a freshman in high school, and I was able to, and I declared myself an art major in high school at the end of my freshman year, which meant that the slots in your schedule, which were supposed to be for science lab and those type of things, I spent in the art studio. And I kind of put my stake in the ground. It's like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to do something that I want to do, something a little more creative, something that I have passion around. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. But as I looked through different professions and a little steering from my parents too, they said, well, try architecture. I'm like, well, I don't know whether I want to do that. I don't know anyone who's an architect. I don't know what it's about. But if I get into a program, fine, I'll go do it. And if I like it, I'll stay. If not, I'm going to switch majors. So I kind of fell into it and I went to school and I fell in love with it.
That's amazing. And one of the things that I really admire about you is now you're a firm owner for this huge company, right? Like, I was shocked. I Googled
we're only about 30 people. We're not huge.
Okay, Cathy, I need to tell you something. I'm doing research on the average firm sizes, right? There's 19,000 firms in the US. This is based on the AIA 2022 statistics. There are 19,000 firms in the US. Only 7% have 50 employees and above. Around 15,000 firms have 2 to 4 employees. So your top tier, you have 30 employees, and that's a major accomplishment. When I checked out the website, I'm like, oh, wow, 30 people, that's a lot. The average is 2 to 4, the majority of the 19,000 firms. So, congratulations. And we want to hear how you landed. Did you buy the firm? Did you inherit it?
I
Like,
did.
yeah, I would love to hear that story.
Yes. So I did buy the firm or with some partners. It's a firm which I've had a long relationship with. This summer will be 2 years here. I knew the firm owners through AIA Charlotte. We served on the board together long time ago. And some of the new partners here with me who are longtime employees here, I had either worked with them previously at other firms or I studied for my exams. We studied for our exams together back in the day. So just long relationships with the guys over here. And when the last founding owner was going to retire a few years ago, he called me up. I got a text from him on a Saturday. I think it was Halloween. I got a random text from him saying, "Hey, we need to talk." So we did, and it was a conversation that they've teased with me over the years, over several years actually, and I was just never in a place where I wanted to do that. I don't think I ever thought I wanted to own a firm or be a firm owner. And but it's such a great firm and it has a rich history. I had gone through a failed merger acquisition transition plan at a previous firm, which I have PTSD over. And if we were able to do it this way, or I could help a firm transition better for a firm I really respected, then I wanted to be part of helping it do
S-
that. If they thought I could help, then I wanted to be part of that.
So, did you work in neighboring concepts and then they offered you
I
the sale or the partnership?
No, I was brought in for that. So I was the outside person,
Oh,
and I was
wow.
brought in knowing that that was the intent. And I waited about 6 months, but for let me work here first. I waited about 6 months and then said, all right, now we'll start talking to the lawyers. I wanted to make sure from the inside that it really was what I thought I was going to buy.
I remember meeting you 2 years ago and I said, "Can we do the podcast interview?" And you said, "I'm still in the process of buying this firm or, talking to the lawyers." So here we are. So what's the
Here we
demographic?
are.
Yes. What's
Yes.
the firm demographic? Like how many partners are there and how was the setup of the firm?
So we have four partners. Um, we're all more or less equal shareholders. Frank Little and myself, as the minorities, we own a little bit more in order to have 51% minority ownership. So we are a hub firm, DBE, or whatever other acronym your state might have for that designation. But it's always been a minority owned firm, and we wanted to make sure that we kept that legacy.
Oh, wow. That's really pretty amazing. So how has it been with the family? And I know you have young kids, right?
Yes.
Has it
Yes,
been
I
an
have a
how was the
kindergartner and a
transition?
second grader.
Yeah.
Yes, it's been good. I think the last firm I was at, I was there for about 5 years, so that was right after I had my son. So they've always seen me working and out and about, so it's been great.
That's good. So,
They're such troopers about it all.
yeah, they must be so proud of you. Maybe they don't understand yet.
Maybe they don't understand everything I do, but
Just give
every
them
now
the
and then my
statistic.
8-year-old, yes, but every now and then when my daughter, the 8-year-old, especially when we're all home during COVID and we're always on the phone or on Zoom, and so she'll go into her room and you can hear her kind of playing on the phone, like a pretend phone, saying that, yeah, kind of mimicking me on the phone at work. It's like, well, I'm busy right now. Oh, let me check my schedule and let me get you on there. And it's been fun to see her try to mimic working and being a professional.
You're a great example to your children and all to the Filipinas out there and architect entrepreneurs. I'm really astounded. I mean, yeah, congratulations. Handling 30 people,
Thank
that's
you.
a lot. Because what's your official job title? Are you the CEO, principal? What's the scope
No,
of your work as
Um, we
as a
call ourselves
partner?
just partners. I mean, we try to call ourselves partner. Right? We all early on we hired a during the transition we hired a apostrophe consulting out of Raleigh, and had them kind of help us through assessments. You know, there are four of us. We all have, we are so different. So who, and we're all so humble. Like, I don't like talking about myself. It's hard, to talk about and
It's
tout
very
your
Filipina too,
accomplishments.
though.
It is,
It is.
it
We're
really
we're
is.
too humble.
We are very humble people. We work hard and we're very humble.
I'm gonna
So,
brag about you, Kathy. Sorry.
well,
Okay.
I can talk all day long about the people and my team here and the firm. I can talk all day long, but it's so hard to talk about yourself.
Yeah. So
But yes, so we had to hire a consultant to help us verbalize the things that we already kind of knew, but didn't necessarily want to step on each other's toes about, well, this is where your strength is, this is where your strength is, and help us divide the tasks. So we had a third party come in and kind of established, I think, what we were all sort of thought already, but it helped us officially say, okay, Cathy, you're in charge of business development. You're the public face of the firm. You help us with the strategy, help us, with culture, firm culture, HR type of things, staffing. That's your strength, is putting teams together and how to bring in new business. We all have our market segments that will lead, but kind of overall strategy, that's you. So that's what I do. I've Luke Volkmar, who is one of my other partners. He's more on the numbers and the business, the financial side. That's fine. Happy to give it to him.
yeah.
Frank Little is very much project manager, very structured, comes from military background. So super structured, organized standards. Let him handle all those standards and how we standardize our specs and Revit and all those things. Have him organize that piece and kind of take leadership of that with the rest of the team here. And then Daniel McNamee is just, he's the heart and soul, I believe. He really does carry our mission to heart and understanding how we bridge the community piece of what we do. We're more of a mission-based firm, transforming communities through architecture. So how every project that we look at goes through that, filters through that lens of how is this transforming the community. We're not going to go after every single project, but we're going to try to find ones that speak to us and the type of work that we want to do. So he helps really bring that piece and how we tell that story and the type of community events and the type of communities that we want to be part of.
That looks like a really powerhouse team. And it's good that you ask for outside consultants to help you, because that's
Mm-hmm.
important to really stay where you're at and stay in your lane, right? There's no duplication of work and no conflicts.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you mentioned that seeking leadership opportunities outside of your office has accelerated your growth in your career. And can you
Mm-hmm.
elaborate specific experiences or roles that have contributed to your professional development, where they really were impactful to you? And I remember you said when you graduated during the recession hit, and then you used the extra time to grow your network and just do allow you to do a lot of different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So during the recession, just out of school, got a great job with a good firm. It was about a 25-person firm here in Charlotte, and so big enough where you had tasks, but also small enough where it was fairly level, and everyone did a little bit of everything, which I love, and that's roughly what we like to do here also, and a firm that we model ourselves after. But during the recession, we went down to 4 days, 20% pay cut, which hurts so bad when you're just out of school because you're already not getting paid a whole lot. But we survived and we managed. And that's when I took the time to take my exams. I was able to get my exams done. They had just allowed concurrency. So I wasn't fully done with my IDP or AXP now, right? I wasn't fully done with my internship hours yet, but they finally just passed where we could take them early. So, like, let's knock them out. But I was also newly elected onto the board of AIA Charlotte. So I was the associate director, so the non-licensed person on the board. And that allowed me to grow my network within the profession. It you get so exposed to different things when you're on a board or you're volunteering or you're part of other organizations. Things that when you're in the grunt work of drafting all day long, you're not experiencing, right? You're not experiencing what are the firm leaders doing? What's the profit and loss statement look like? How are we budgeting? What's important here? I think within my first year on the board, we fired our executive director and had to go search for a new one. And what was the process of what kind of executive director do we need for the organization, interviewing different people, and ultimately, vetting and hiring someone who has now been there for over 10 years. And I don't even know how old I was. I was like 25.
No, that's why I was wondering, how did you gain so much knowledge as an architect and not an entrepreneur who went to business school? So it's because of your AIA volunteer up and being
Yes.
there
And
with
all the
the,
other
yeah.
boards who I had eventually been a part of, I think there's only been, I think after my son was born, after my second child, I said, okay, I'm going to take a whole year. I rolled off of some boards. I'm going to take a whole year. I'm going to like pause on being on all of these boards and these volunteer things. I think I only ended up like 1 year where I wasn't on any boards, but eventually got pulled back in. But I've served on the Chamber of Commerce board of directors. I've different nonprofits here in town for hunger related associations, food pantries and things like that, but things that really just speak to me where I've somehow gotten connected and given the opportunity to serve. I think that's the type of growth that you're not going to see traditionally if you just put your head down and stare at the computer all day, but really wanting, you need to be out there finding something that drives you. If you want this, you're not going to get that at your firm, but you can absolutely get that volunteer wise. If you're passionate about it, you can get that outside of the office and grow your technical skills, which you absolutely need to do in the office, and then grow in all your other soft skills outside of that too.
Yeah, that's good that a lot of, I mean, you were still in the profession, like at the AIA
Mm-hmm.
level. You also knew what was going on, so you already knew like the challenges that architects face in the industry. So that's why I was wondering, like, and asking about like your current role as your head of business development and strategy and HR. And that's my thing. I love everything operations, but I also have a coach, and so like he's been helping me with
Mm-hmm.
scaling the business because we're about almost 30 employees now in the company. But
Great.
my question is like, did you get any formal training in like all this strategy work? Let's talk about business development first, because a lot of people they don't do that. They just wait on referrals because you can't have a sustainable business if you don't build relationships and just wait for referrals. So how do you do business development exactly? Like, what's your
Oh
strategy?
gosh. I mean, it depends on the market. We do everything here from affordable housing with private developers to public projects as well. K-12 schools, higher education, state-funded projects. We also work with different nonprofits and helping them, those are really you have to handhold and get them through that fundraising bit. So there's so many different financial sources where our projects come from. So we have to strategize in different ways to get them. There's definitely some of them are word of mouth, repeat business, referrals, but the public projects are qualifications based and how to write those proposals and building the relationships and trust when you're able to in those public ways, right? Being where they are and understanding so they can see you as you care about what you what we care about. So being involved in the different things that they're involved in, um, and I think that's where I've started a lot of my connections were just showing up at different places I knew they were going to be also, so that they could see me as someone that cared the same way that they did. And when you build those personal relationships, or relationships outside of projects, then there's a level of trust that helps you get that next project. I had a mentor once tell me that every time you either saw someone somewhere, shook their hand, or emailed them an article that you thought that they would be interested in. It's almost putting like a nickel in that piggy bank, and you just keep on, and eventually that will pay off. And it might not, but it takes a long time to build trust in relationships, and that's where projects are won. So formal training, I've worked at a few big firms through the years that had training, development training for business development, and they had their way of doing things. So there are some tools that sometimes I pull out from those. I did have, there was one firm I was part of that had what they called future leader development. It was like a year-long program once a month where you spent half the time doing some sort of, half the day with doing leadership development. Yeah, like a Dale Carnegie or some other outside vendor came in for half the day for leadership development, and then the other half was learning more about the company and the books and all the different markets that they served. So that was probably the most structured architecture leadership training that I had received. But I've also done other sorts of year-long leadership training programs. There's so many out there, right?
Do you have
There was
something
one
you
through
can
the Chamber of
recommend? Yeah.
Commerce. Yeah, I mean, there was, you look locally. I did the Future Leaders Program, or Emerging Business Leaders Program at the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce. Uh, I did CBI, it's Community Building Initiative here in Charlotte, which is more based on diversity and inclusion. So DEI, back before DEI was the cool thing to say, there was a year-long training program there with a cohort of leaders all over the city. So that really helped. Also, being part of those programs also helped build that network, right, outside of architecture,
And
and
it's
creating
important.
common
Yeah,
language.
and it's
Mhm.
important also to network with people other than architects, because a lot of networking events happen with architects, but being out
Yes.
there and meeting different types of people from different backgrounds and industries is really important.
It is. And that was, the whole time I was, or the bulk of the time I was on the board of AIA Charlotte. And when I was on the executive committee and eventually president, I was geared towards engaging the public. How do we do programs where we're not just talking to other architects, and creating programs where we're interfacing with other people? Because the more, we always complain, oh, well, no one understands us. They don't know us. I'm like, well, you're not out there. And how can we give you a space where you can be in front of other people and not just talk about ourselves or to ourselves about ourselves in these little bubbles? And that's not going to help the profession if we're not out there talking to other people.
A lot of architects do complain, and then that's it.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to do something about it. You have to talk to people outside of the profession, or else it's just going to be the same thing. And you're going to say that they don't understand you, they don't respect you, they don't do it. None of that matters if you're not trying.
Yeah. So, in terms of strategy and forecasting, because this podcast is really geared towards architects who want to start their own firm or already firm
Mm-hmm.
owners. So, I ask a lot of people, how do you forecast your pipeline, or or your sales, or whatever the projects that you win? They don't know how to do that. Most of the solopreneurs have no idea how to forecast or do some strategy around forecasting.
Mm-hmm. So, gosh, I've worked at small firms, I've worked at large firms, I've worked in like 1,000-person firms, and there's so much more structure there that I think, and people don't like the big firms because of the structure, but there are tools that they use that you can use at a smaller firm in order to forecast and to project plan and to make sure staffing and workload are equitable, that don't take up that much time.
Because it's a
Or
lot if you have 30
it's
employees,
it
and
is a
that's,
lot.
I mean, that's
Yes,
a payroll. So you need to
it
make
is.
sure, I mean, with a person 2 to 4 person company, it's not that bad, but when you have 30, how do you manage the pipeline? Do you have projects like 10 years already booked, for the next 3 years,
Some of them
or?
are. Some of We have short projects and we have long projects. We have some projects that are like 3 months long, and 3, 6 months long, and we have those 4, 5, 10 year long projects. Our transit projects. We do a lot of public transportation. Gosh, we can be working on those for like 10 years, from the planning to, we do the architecture for the stations, but we're involved early on in the planning, and those are publicly funded and they take miles and miles of your road. So yes, those are really long-term projects, and they're intermittent. They're busy here, then they pause for a while. Um, so what we do here quarterly, we look at all the projects. We enter them into a project management software. We use a Deltek. Ajira is a small business version of the big Deltek that I've used at larger firms. We are transitioning right now to Vantage Point. We think that some of their tools in that product is a little bit better. So in terms of where we are right now as a company. So we are moving towards Vantage Point right now and in the process of that transition. But quarterly, we all meet, make sure that all the project managers are diligent about putting their projects in there so we can look at them holistically every quarter to understand, do we have the right staff? Who is overloaded? How can we support? Who are we hiring? Like, who do we need to hire in order to sustain this growth? Based off of projects that we already know that we have under contract. And then every week, every Friday, we just spend, no more than 30 minutes. It's 30 minutes to not even an hour to go through the next week's staffing to make sure which projects are people working on, to make sure that they have enough support on everyone's projects. So quarterly, it's probably like less than a 2 hour meeting to go through all the different projects that we have, go through, and doing the forecasting. And then seriously, it's like 30 minutes on a Friday morning so that everyone knows what they're doing on Monday.
That's good. It's also transparency to the team. So they know that they have work and they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important to have quarterly meetings, because a lot of times we can get sucked into like drafting and that's it, because we're so busy doing all the deliverables.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know if you know Bolanley. She is CFO of a big New York firm. She said that all you need is 30 minutes a week to look at your finances. You can't like
Yes,
not know how much you have every week and how much you're making, and like 30 minutes is all you need,
it
right?
is.
Especially
Yes,
when it comes to finance. I know that's not your lane, but everybody should know and watch their money like a hawk, especially for a small business.
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk
So
about
yeah,
um, hiring and staff retention. I know that's a big deal right now. Are you having any problems? What are your strategies for employee retention, hiring? Do you hire young people, more senior? Like, what are the challenges,
we hire
strategies?
everything.
Yeah. So yeah, can you?
We hire.
That's a big topic now because people can't find like so. So yeah, just
Yes, it's hard to find experienced people. We hire a lot of young people, but we find it's getting harder and harder just given our responsibility load to be able to train them well. So we have been hiring, project manager, senior project manager level folks that are 10, 15. We've tried to get a couple 20-year people in here. We have been trying. We are a smaller firm, so sometimes when you're leaving a large firm with 20 years experience, we just can't afford to pay that, especially when they come from a recruiter that has that added percentage point on top. It does get very difficult. Being this, yes, it's what we need though, and we have been trying. So that's been our most difficult kind of cohort to hire. And I think that's where we're going to see more sustained growth. But we do need people. We are hiring 4 or 5 people right out of school, new graduates this year. And we have a couple summer interns. So we do have a lot of young people in the office. And what we, I think the type of work that we do and the mission of our firm is really it really is pulling in a lot of young people. I think that Gen X, Z, right? The Gen Z are very more socially conscious and wanting to go places that are. So I think the type of work that we do draws them here. And that's great because we're not like every other firm, I think in that regard, everyone here is because they share the mission. So that while we might not be able, as a smaller firm, be able to give them all the perks of a larger firm, they think it's worth it.
So how do you train like the newer staff to be confident that, like it's hard for you probably don't have a lot of time to train the younger people, but how does the training work, especially the fresh grads?
So everyone here, when they start, we set them up. We have a couple accounts with LinkedIn Learning, right? So we give them their Revit training through LinkedIn Learning, give them an account for a bit so that they can do their kind of boot camp for Revit. A lot of them say they use it in school, but then we find, well, yes, you use it in school, and it's very different from using it in an office space. So, spending those 2 days doing some structured Revit training is worth it to us. And our onboarding, I created a new way that we onboard here since I've started here. And your week is when you show up, your Outlook calendar for the week is your first week is almost all full. And you have either one-on-ones or small group meetings with just about everyone in the firm on different topics. So we share that workload of how to onboard people and get them up to speed. So we have some people that they do the file structure or how we do QA QC. They have time allocated for their Revit training. The way that and it could be small things, where we have some interns show them how we use which templates we use for title blocks for presentations or how to fill out a timesheet. All those different tasks, we break them up, we give allocated time so that when you build those connections early and you know who you can go to for questions on certain topics. So we want to make sure that the training and onboarding is shared across the board with everyone, and everyone feels a little bit of ownership in making someone feel welcome and get them up to speed on how we do things here.
That's a great strategy. So you're not really just using one person to onboard. You have like the entire team to pretty much onboard the new employees.
Yes. And you're assigned like your buddy, right? Your new hire buddy is there for everything, and just to make sure you get your tool, you know where the pens are and you know all the little things you might forget about. But so that person's always there for you, but it is shared. We want to be able to share that responsibility and everyone have ownership about the culture of the firm and how we want to represent people. So we do also have happy hours once a month, and sometimes those are just in-house. And sometimes we go out, we're actually going out to a bar, after work today for our monthly one, especially since we have some new hires that have started in the last few weeks. So we want to make
Oh,
sure that we break some bread, toast them, and make them feel welcome outside of just projects.
so what's your team culture like?
We're fairly lax here, I think. I mean, we're casual.
Yeah.
I think we try to be casual about what we do, not trying to be too stuffy. I mean, that's why people want to be here versus a corporate firm. Most of us wear jeans every day. It's
That's good.
um, but but we're only in the office 2 days a week minimum 2 days a week. So we are very flexible. There are about a third of the office that come in every day because they want to be. We understand that we want to be as inclusive as possible as a firm. So understanding that some people just work better in the office. Some people don't have great home work setups, right? That home office is essential to making it worth it. And some people just don't have that, especially the younger people that live in these little one-bedroom apartments on their kitchen tables. Uh, come into the office every day. No one's going to be mad at you for that. But we also understand that some people commute quite a ways to be here, and you don't have to do that every day. Or you have kids, or you want to be here, but you have to leave at 2 o'clock, 2:30 to go pick up your kid. That's fine. And you want to work from home the rest of the afternoon. Good for you.
Oh wow. Can I
It's
work there,
what
Cathy, if I need a job?
it's we if you are not your best self outside of the office, you're not going to be your best self here. So if you are worried about your kids or childcare or a sick puppy or whatever else is drawing your attention away from your work, deal with it, or else you're not going to be productive here.
And you know
So
what? in our lifetime, we spend probably 60% of our life at work or more,
Yes,
actually. So
absolutely.
might as
Hmm.
well have a really nice and flexible workplace that will help everyone do their jobs better.
Yes. I think that's something that we've learned, from the pandemic is that we can do our work just about anywhere.
Do you have remote
And
people outside of you're in North Carolina, right?
yes, I'm in North Carolina. We do have one person we're here in Charlotte. We do have one person that lives in Winston-Salem, which is about an hour and a half away. So she comes into the office maybe once a month, you know, show her face. We do have also an employee in Atlanta.
Oh, that's great.
So he was a long-term employee here that moved there for family reasons, and he just, he still wants to be here and he works well remote. So he was here earlier this week for a meeting, but every few months he'll come in.
That's great. What's your favorite part of being a firm owner?
I love seeing the people here thrive. Like when they accomplish something and they feel really good about the work that they do, that makes me so proud.
That's great. I like that you're service oriented and you always want to put others and empower people like your community and your service in the community, especially for minority architects. Can you talk about that a little more?
Um, let's see. For minority architects, I mean, just because especially here in the South. I think it's maybe a little bit different in the Northeast, in those big Northeast cities, and in California or the West Coast. I stick out here. There aren't a lot of minorities. I know statistically, nationally, there are very few of people that look like me and look like us in the profession. But especially here in Charlotte, in North Carolina, and definitely here in the Southeast, you stick out a little bit more than in some other places. So I do get pinged to be on different diversity, you know, boards and things like that. And at, at a certain point, I know that there's so many other people out there. It's ready to give them a lift. Like I'm so grateful for the opportunities that it has given me when I was younger, but I'm ready to pass that on and have others have that opportunity for leadership and growth. So I'm at that point. I know I'm only 40, so I'm not super old, but I'm also feel like there's so many others out there that need that boost and that confidence. But when I'm out in the community, I think I've been on different boards for, say, like Do Greater Charlotte is a new organization here that was founded for creative entrepreneurship. You'd love this organization.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
everything from photography to digital. They have a whole creative lab, tech lab that has like the podcast studio, the video studio, the 3D printer maker space. They're hosting Project Pipeline for NOMA this year in their space. So creating, but they also teach that entrepreneurial skill, right?
So
It's
so
they want,
you mentioned your age, right? This is a personal question I'm going to ask you. You look very
yeah.
young, and when I was growing my business, I also kind of looked young and dealing with all
Hmm.
these big time firms that are like, companies that I work for. Is it hard for people to take you seriously? What's your strategy? Because I mean, Filipinos look very young and
We
you're
do,
very
we do.
successful. So like do they mistake you for like the secretary or like the junior intern? Because I mean, how do
Yeah,
you deal
so
with people who don't know that you're running the firm?
so yes. And I get this question asked quite a bit, especially lately since, the firm ownership has transitioned. I've never been a fan of labels. I hate titles, and that's probably just the humility, right? But every now and then having to throw that title around helps, right? To say that I'm the partner or I'm the principal in charge, uh, or when I was the president of an organization, or just I don't like doing it, but I feel like it's been necessary to give me credibility.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
partner
and I think
of neighboring concepts is pretty cool. So,
so, yeah, so just being able to share
yeah.
with people and having to bite that bullet. I was like, okay, you know what? I have to tout myself and I have to have confidence in what I say. You know, I still do site visits, you know, especially with some of the younger employees. I have, someone who's like 2 years out of school, and I've been dragging her to all my site visits. She drew it all, and we had a project architect. I was like, no, I'm going to take on the CA, and you're going to do CA with me,
That's
and I'm
great.
going to.
Yeah.
And so she's been coming with me, and the contractor, he gives me a hard time. You know, he's one of those, like, there's some really good contractors and some that aren't, and some that will just constantly like, well, why'd you draw it? You know, and I know he's teasing half the time, but like, would you tease a male white architect the same way that you have with me on the site every single time I'm out here? Like, that's just
Yeah. I used to do
a little
CA.
frustrating.
I used
Nope.
to do CA too, and people will say, "Hey, babe or hun." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm
Yes.
not your
No,
babe
they
or your hun." Okay.
exactly. Yeah, they don't say that so much, but
No,
gosh, it's just like
this was years
this
ago.
teasing. Oh
Yeah.
no, I've definitely been sexually harassed on a construction site, and I've definitely not. They've had some words,
So, quick
but
question: how do you
I think
balance?
her.
What? Sorry.
No, I was going to say that, the one thing with her going to the site and seeing when we leave there after a little exchange with a contractor, she'll be like, "Gosh, you know what you're doing." You know, it's like, well, you have to, like, I'm not taking from you, right? I'm
Yeah,
not going
yeah,
to take some BS from you on the site because I know how this is supposed to be done, and I know you're just trying to get away with something, and you're just trying to be, you know, funny, or you think you're trying to be funny, and you just have to show that you know what you're doing.
yeah. Well, your trainee or your new employee is really lucky that you take them to the sites, because it's so convenient for firm owners not to take the new hires to the site, that they're just sitting on the chair and doing drafting. I think it's
You
important for them to know how it gets built, or what they're drawing exactly in real life. But
you don't learn until you see it built.
yeah. So I mean, how do you balance your commitments and responsibilities within your office, your firm, family, professional growth, volunteer work? Do you have a clone?
Um, Time management, I guess. You know, I live by my Outlook calendar. If it's not on my calendar, then I don't do it. And it's down to, I had to put together a fee proposal or, get a contract out today. I block out time on my calendar to do that. If an email is going to take longer for me to actually respond, then I drag it over to my calendar and I put time on there to respond to it. You know, that's yes. If it that's I Everything in my life is scheduled by my Outlook calendar. Otherwise, it doesn't get done.
I like that. Instead of having to do a list, it's just there on the calendar.
Yep.
That's a great answer.
And that
So,
way, also people look at my calendar too. And I was like, well, if you have something you need to talk to me about, and yes, you can Slack message me, and I'll try to get around to it. Or if you think it's going to take longer than a few minutes, then put time on my calendar, and they can look and see when I'm available.
that's good.
And yes, that's my policy. Put it on my calendar, and we will talk. And yes, if I'm around, yes, I will absolutely answer your question. But the best way to get my attention is put on my calendar.
I'm so glad I made it to the calendar. And this is so cool. Like, I just like found you live on Facebook. Like, you're active. I'm like, hey, I gotta ask right now. I need to strike when the
Yes.
iron's hot. Remember,
Yes, while I'm there on the couch with my
I'm
kids on
like,
Saturday morning.
I'm like putting my calendar links. Come on, it's your story is too good not to share in Filipino. For this month's Filipino Heritage Month. So,
Thank you.
um, can you talk about your award?
Oh
Big
gosh, the
award.
NCARB Gold Medal. Yes, the NCARB Gold Medal is given to by the president of NCARB to people who he thinks needs them, I guess. So yes, that's my humility. I'm trying to
Okay, no,
get
talk
past
about it.
that.
What is the
So
award? How
yes.
many people joined? I mean,
Well, it is something that's strictly given by the president of the organization. So he, Bayless Ward, who is the the president, the well, I guess now past president of NCARB, Bayless Ford, who was a 2022, 2023, they term off in the middle of the summer. President gave me a call and said he wanted to give this to me. And I said, okay, sure.
So the award
But
is
it's
2023 NCARB President's Medalist for Distinguished Service Award.
correct.
Yeah.
And that is, so I've been a volunteer for NCARB for several years now. And it's been an organization, I said I've been involved with AIA for years and years and years and other different organizations. And NCARB gets a really bad rap, right? Because they're the regulatory organization. And everyone has to think, why are you involved in that? And really, the bulk of the volunteers and the members of NCARB are there because they serve on their state licensing boards, which means their governor appointed them to serve on their state licensing board. So when you get a phone call from the governor saying, the governor's office, it wasn't the actual governor, but the governor's office, boards and commissions, gives you a call and says, hey, your name has been put on his, your name's been put across his desk to serve on the board of architecture. Are you willing to serve? And it's hard to say no to something like that. So I don't know how my name got in front of him or who put it out there, but it did. And so in 2018, I joined the North Carolina Board of Architecture, so started attending the national NCARB meetings. And I had known other people who had done that in the past that I look up to and knew how meaningful it was to them to give back to the profession in that way. So I did, and I've dug in since it's an opportunity that not everyone gets. So the last few years, my role has been focused on governance. It's about how the leadership of the organization is made up, who elects them, who's out there to be elected. Now, I was chair of the credentials committee, which oversees the election process the last couple of years. And this year they put me on a governance work group looking at the structure of the board of directors. There's, while it's not officially written in the bylaws, there's almost this ladder that people talk about, that that you go up through the regional leadership and then you get up through the board leadership. I think the shortest amount of service that a sitting NCARB president had served was like 17 years. Like there's some crazy average length of time of service for the organization before you can become president.
Oh, wow.
Going through this supposed ladder that everyone, this traditional ladder that people, so even though the bylaws don't state that you have to go through that path, so it's just the way things have been done for years and years, and the 100 years that the organization's been in place. So as a credentials committee chair, doing some outreach, did a few workshops on explaining what the bylaws actually say versus what's actually done.
Yeah.
And kind of making sure that people are aware of that. And then also on this governance work group this year, proposing changes to the board of directors and creating at-large members, not just regional members that come from the regions, but also at-large members that could also be just volunteers. You can be a volunteer of NCARB without sitting on your state regulatory board.
Cathy,
And
that
those
sounds like
people
a
give, yeah.
sorry
So those
to
people give just as much
yeah.
to the organization as those that are actually members in
Yeah.
the traditional sense. So giving them leadership opportunities as well.
So, Cathy, that sounds almost like another full-time job, just what you said. So, congratulations, you deserve the
Thank you.
award. And I mean, based on our our conversation, the past few minutes, all throughout our conversation, it's always about giving back and serving the community and your team. It's just such a kind of inspiring story, and also refreshing to see that people who are principals of firms who are busy, who have family, responsibilities, have time to give back. And I really commend you for that. So who is Cathy
Thank you.
outside of the firm?
I'm Fred and Saul's mom is who I am. Right? Outside of all of that, I have two adorable kids. They're finishing, or I guess when this comes out, they're in first and third grade. They are My life centers around them pretty much outside of this.
That's great. It's a
So
great
I say
time. Yeah.
yes. So I do say when everyone I've done a couple of presentations at universities and I've showed them different projects that the firm's done, but I always end on a slide of the picture of my kids. That's my favorite creation, that I've ever done. There's all these projects and great things that we can show in our portfolio, but they are definitely my proudest creation.
Oh, that's so nice. So, my last question, where do you see yourself and the firm in 3 years?
3 years. Well, we are looking at new office space. We are looking at growth. I'm hoping in 3 years we may officially have a second office. That I think is in the works, hopefully near term.
Congratulations. I really enjoyed our conversation. Any last thoughts you can share?
Now, just I want everyone, especially as we're starting to get into an economic downturn, that's where a lot of my growth outside of the office came. So if you feel discouraged with slowdowns in the office, find something you're passionate about, whether you're busy or not, but definitely when things are slow, find your passion and hopefully that will get you to where you actually want to be.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Architect My Life, a podcast brought to you by MGS Global Group. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to add to the conversation through your own experiences, I encourage you to be a guest in one of our upcoming episodes. Visit architectmylife.com to apply and learn how. I firmly believe that a strong community drives change and fosters success. If you'd like to be part of this community, join the All Women Architect My Life Facebook group. Please take a moment to review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks again for listening. I'm Aya Shlachter. Until next time.